Hi everyone, it's Leanne from Bradford Under Fives, and I'm going to talk a little bit about immunisations because I thought while we're at home eagerly waiting for the vaccine against COVID, I thought now would be an ideal time to talk about the other immunisations that is recommended for our children to have in the UK. So it's absolutely vital that we think about immunising our children when we are thinking about their health, because it helps to protect them against really nasty diseases like diphtheria, whooping cough, polio, measles, mumps and rubella, and some really nasty diseases that can lead to things like meningitis, septicemia and pneumonia. Now what happens is, when our children are vaccinated, a little bit of the bacterium or the virus is injected into the body, which encourages the immune system to produce antibodies that will help to fight off any infection or disease that they come into contact with. So, for example, if your child has been immunised and they come into contact with somebody who has one of these diseases, their body will recognise that and be really equipped to and be able to deal with it and fight it off. Whereas a child who's not had any immunisations, their bodies are not that capable of fighting those kind of diseases. So it's really vital that we think about immunising our children. Now, when we visit some of our parent and toddler groups, we're often asked questions about immunisations because some people are deciding whether to actually vaccinate their children or not, and they're not too sure what to do. So I thought that I could answer some of those questions so that you at home now have got the facts so that you're able to make a really good decision and hopefully will vaccinate your children against these diseases. So some of the questions that we come across can be things like, well, the main one would be, are vaccines safe? Is it safe for my child to be vaccinated? The answer to that is that yes, it is safe, because any medication, any vaccination has to go through thorough and really extensive testing before it is allowed to be administered. Therefore, around the world, all these scientists that are really working hard to now develop new vaccines for different things really thoroughly test things and look out for different side effects, different things that might happen if we take a certain medicine or a vaccine. So before they are allowed to come out on licence, they have to be proved that they are safe. So the answer to that is yes. Secondly, something that interlinks with that would be, what are the side effects from my children having these vaccines? Well, yes, there are some side effects that may occur after your child has had the vaccines. Really common ones are things like there may be a little bit of redness where the child has had the injection, and it may be a little bit sore, a bit tender. Your child might become a little bit grumpy, feeling a little bit unwell, and they might even develop a temperature. This is fairly common, and therefore it can be absolutely appropriate to administer a liquid paracetamol, and this would soothe those symptoms and make them feel a little bit happier. These symptoms shouldn't last long, and if they do, or if you're worried, you can always phone your GP. Some other questions might be, if these vaccines are so good that they have actually wiped out some of these illnesses, like diphtheria, it's practically vanished from the UK. The reason that this has happened is because of the high levels of immunisations. So what happens is, if now the number of people having their immunisations drops, then these diseases can increase again, basically, because there are more people to infect and more people that are not able to fight off the disease if they come into contact. With the society that we live in, and people now are, free to travel the world and go from different countries to countries where there are all different kinds of diseases and infections, there is a real high risk that these infections can be brought back into the UK. And if there are a high number of people who haven't been vaccinated, then there is a high risk that these people can become infected with the disease. So the reason why these diseases might have been eradicated or really, really decreased in number is because so many people were being immunised. So if we drop those levels now, then all that means is that these diseases can be increased again. It's as simple as that, really. So it's to protect your own children, you and your family and everybody else around. Another question might be, how will I know when my child is due a jab? The answer to that is you don't really need to know. It might be nice for you to sort of prepare yourself so you know that when they're coming up, but in actual fact, if you're registered with your GP, you will have a letter or a text message or even a phone call around the time that these vaccinations are due, and you'll be able to just phone up and make your appointment. If you miss an appointment, that's fine, you can just rearrange. There's no need for your child to miss out on that vaccination. Some other questions might be, will my child be upset? Will they cry? Some parents are put off by giving their child the vaccinations because they've heard stories of children crying and being really upset and heard how horrible the situation was. Well, yes, your child might be upset, but only for a few minutes, because you're there to soothe them. And what's worse, seeing your child being upset for a few minutes because you've protected them against these really deadly diseases, or you having to go visit them in hospital when they're fighting off these diseases because they've picked them up because their bodies have not been able to fight them off. It's going to be much worse, that, isn't it? Another question that we have is, do the vaccines contain gelatin? One of the vaccines for the MMR does contain gelatin, and the other one doesn't. If you are worried about this, or if you have an issue with this, or you don't want your child to have the jabs because of this, raise the question with your GP, because it can be possible for them to offer a gelatin-free vaccination, because they want everybody to be immunised, so they will, if they can, accommodate. I hope now you've got some of the facts that you will really think about having your children immunised to protect everybody against these really horrible, deadly diseases.